How many of us are familiar with the Family Feud? This is a game show, a famous game show that was featured in the US. The Family Feud is a game wherein two families would be battling against each other. Okay, pwedeng nanay, tatay, kapatid, lolo, lola, anak, pamangkin, or whoever, basta they come from the same families. Okay? But, in the world of business, the Family Feud is of a different nature. It is now one family who fights and quarrel among themselves. Correct? And in the Western world, this Family Feud in the business world would create or would be captured in headline news or in tabloids. Like, for example, the Gucci family, when they were battling against each other as to who was going to be CEO or managing director, it was in the headlines. How many of us are familiar with Anna Nicole Smith and this very famous old husband who passed away, si J.H. Marshall? He was a billionaire. And we know that up until today, the family is quarreling. Diba? And the Philippines was not exempt to them also. The likes of the Coancos, Zobel, Ayalas. These are the old rich families who were in business, and somewhere along the way, a family feud would ensue. And sad as it may be noted, a lot of families have broken up because of things like this. Sibling rivalry, emotional tension, jealousy, big bucks, and power struggle is the name of the game in the world of business in Family Feud. In today's conversation, we will talk about a person who was among a tribe which has been in a long-standing feud with the people of Israel. Since the time of Noah, when one of his sons, for those who have watched the movie, if you remember towards the end, one of his sons, biblical po talaga yon, that one of his sons was cursed, si Ham. And from the family of Ham came about the Canaanite people, the people of Canaan. And the people of Canaan used to live in the promised land before Abraham's family took over. So sila po yung nandoon. Okay? They lived in that area. They used to be in one family. Magkapamilya, magkapuso, ano pa ba? Magkapatid. But then somewhere along the way, something happened. So much so that the Canaanites were described as a people of inborn wickedness. Ang sama naman nun, di ba? Your family is known to be someone with inborn wickedness. Pagkapanganak nyo pa lang po, masama na kayo, wicked na kayo. Di ba? That is the label, that is one of the labels in the Canaanite family. And they are one accursed race. Because of this, the Canaanites knew that they were a warring nation with Israel. So they were very hostile against them. Ito din po yung tribe, ito din po yung group of people whom Joshua was commanded to annihilate. Ganun sila kasama that they needed to be obliterated out of the world. Diba? Dapat wala na sila. They were not in existence. However, Matthew puts into the Bible one of the accounts about a Canaanite woman with whom the Lord was very pleased. Why? Because of having such great faith. The Bible contrastingly speaks about the faith of a Canaanite woman so great that compared to Jesus' disciples who were time and again reminded, O you of little faith. Diba laging sinasabi ni Christ sa kanila yon? Every time something wrong happens, O you of little faith. Jesus Christ constantly reminds them that their faith was so little. And here was a Canaanite, and a woman at that, who was being complimented as being one with great faith. Matthew's gospel cites this woman as the only person in the Bible, the only one who was directly complimented and told, you are of great faith. The title of our message, Indomitable Persistence. Unshakable, firm. It is something that cannot be changed. If you will take note that this story is both written in the book of Matthew in chapter 15, which we will go through thoroughly this afternoon, but it is also written by Mark in Mark chapter 7. I will be juggling between the two accounts, but most importantly, I will take the book of Matthew in detail and in length. Matthew chapter 15, verse 21 starts and reads, Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. If you'll take note at this point in time, Jesus was already getting tired. Why? Popular na siya. Because he would be having speaking engagements. Okay? Every time he'd go to the mountain, people would follow him. When he goes down to the lake, people would follow him. Morning, noon, and night, people would come to him asking him questions and questions and questions. And he would be talking and talking at length about the kingdom of God, about who he was, about what he was on earth for, that salvation was for the people. Time and again, people would be following him. Add to that, he would be conducting miracles after miracles. And at this point in time, Jesus was getting tired. He was tired that he needed to withdraw and medyo retire for a while. He wanted to have some time for himself. He wanted to have some me time. That is why he went to Tyre and Sidon. Tyre and Sidon is about 80 kilometers away from Jerusalem. It is way out into the countryside, if you will compare. It is not an Israel country. He now has gone leaving Israel. Why? Because he hoped and he wanted to go to a place that he will remain anonymous. He wanted to maintain anonymity so that he does not have to defend himself against the Pharisees. He did not need to speak to anyone. He did not need to perform miracles. But if you will read on, someone took notice. Someone recognized him. And we read, a Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him. Canaanites and Israelites, they're not supposed to talk to each other. They're not even supposed to be seen together. Add to that, this woman was a woman. And during that time, women, they should not come and talk to men. That's a no-no. Unlike ngayon, nakakatabi na natin yung mga men, diba? Women, na during that time, you're not even supposed to be seen with them, much more be close to them, much more speak with them. If you read the account of Mark, it will say that Mark was saying that this woman was Greek and Syro-Phoenician. That means, wala po talagang nananalaytay sa dugo niya na Israelite. She was a Gentile as Gentile can be. She was really off from the Israelites' bloodline. Wala na talaga siyang dugong Israelita. So we will read on. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him crying out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. This woman, she knew her theology. Alam niya kung sino yung kanyang nilalapitan. She knew that she was meeting up with the enemy. She knew that she was going to someone who was a people of Israel. She recognized him. Kilala niya, son of David. And the Canaanites know that David was from the lineage of the Israelites. So alam niya that she was approaching Jesus, or she was approaching a man who was an Israelite. You will wonder, why is this woman going against all cultural laws, all cultural barriers? Why does she have to go that length to be able to speak to an Israelite? If you read further, you will be able to understand. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. You know, our moms, kami pong mga nanay, and I'm sure a lot of our moms around will be able to identify, if your child is suffering, konting lagnat-lagnat lang, di ba? We'd rather suffer, we'd rather take the pain, we'd rather take the sickness. And this is what's the reality with this mom as well. She was in pain. Why? Because her child was suffering. Her child was demon-possessed. Hindi po simpleng lagnat laki, sabi nga nila, diba? It's not a simple fever that the child is suffering from. It is not even a simple case of needing some money to be able to go to bring this child to the hospital for cure. It is not even simple, wala pong gamot, I need some medicine. But she had a big problem. And that big problem was her daughter. Her daughter was not only simply sick, she was demon-possessed. And if we will read and recall of some movies that we have seen, kung saan makikita natin, di ba, how demon-possessed people would be acting up, I'm sure this mother was in pain. Every time she'd see her child having those seizure, or siguro nanginginig, nagsisisigaw, then expressing something that she cannot express, can you imagine the pain the mother is going through? And some translations would say, she is severely possessed. She can go against all cultural laws just to be able to present her case to someone she knew, that she could have heard about, that was going to solve her problem. She had a major problem that needed a major solution. The mother's choice of a solution was a big one too. She went to Jesus himself. This woman runs to her enemy. She did not fear. Her problem was big, and it made her strong and fearless to be able to approach even the enemy. The Gentile woman was persistently appealing to Jesus, Lord, have mercy on me. But you know how Jesus reacted? If you look and read at the following verse, what did Jesus do? Jesus did not answer, which is such a shocker. Because if you read all the accounts of Jesus, every time someone comes and talks to him and presents a case to him, anong gagawin niya? He would act on it. If he will not act on it, he will reply. There is always going to be a response. But in this case, Jesus did not answer. He kept quiet. He was not minding the woman. Imagine with me for a moment. Guro naglalakad sila Jesus, seeking for a place of solitude. And what happens? Here comes a woman bugging them. And we read previously, it was not a simple following lang, no? She was not just, Jesus, excuse me. No, it wasn't that case. She was crying. And you can imagine that cry of plea. And what happened? In Jesus' quietness, the disciples gets in. While they were being followed, while this woman was crying and wailing her case, the disciples go to Jesus and urged Him. Siguro sabi ng mga disciples, Jesus, ang kulit, ang ingay, sagutin mo na nga, or else send her away. Please do send her away. Let her go about her own business. Because during that time, if a woman was following a man, intriga po yan. It was not heard of. It should not be happening. But here, I am sure that further away, at length, hindi po matatawaran ang haba, sumusunod yung babae. And she just kept on crying and crying and crying. In Jesus' silence, the disciples urged Him, send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. Jesus, we can't rest. We can't sleep. Remember, Jesus wanted to rest. That's why He went to Tyre and Sidon. He wanted to rest. But this woman was not giving them the opportunity to do that. And I'm sure the disciples were equally tired because they would stay with Jesus morning, noon, and night. And it was no joke. Or on the other hand, maybe the disciples were pleading with Him equally. Lord, pakisagot mo na nga para umalis na, para matigil na. But Jesus' reply was equally unnerving and must have been disappointing to this mother. We read in the next verse, He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. Jesus, nakakalimutan mo yata, ang layo na ng sinundan ko. Jesus, excuse me, in case you did not notice, I'm a woman. I'm not supposed to be following you, but I am. Isa pa po, kaaway ako, pero eto po, nagsusumamo ako. I am pleading with you. I am a Canaanite pleading with an Israelite to listen to my plea. And you tell me, sorry, hindi ka kasali. Hindi kita kapamilya. Because I came only for the lost sheep of Israel. Wow. That must have been a big slap on the face of this woman. Hindi ba pwedeng bigyan siya ng A for effort? Diba? Can we not just reward her for her effort? She has been following us and crying and wailing here. Let's give her that chance. But no, Jesus replies, I was only sent for Israel. And you are not part of it. I know the solution. I have the solution. But I cannot give it to you because you are not part of my family. You know what? This reply was actually designated for the disciples. He wanted the disciples to know the focus of Jesus' ministry on earth was supposedly for the Israelites. Jesus knew, and He had to let the disciples know that my ministry on earth is for Israel. As a matter of fact, that was His command to them. Go to the lost sheep of Israel. If you will read Matthew somewhere in chapter 10, you will read that the command given by Jesus to the disciples was, go into the lost sheep of Israel. So Jesus was commanding the disciples, I came, my ministry, my focus is for Israel and Israel alone. What does that make of the Canaanites? Lord, what does that make of us? But you know, this address was Jesus' reply also to the woman. Because what did the woman say? How did the woman address Jesus? Lord, Son of David. So even the woman knew that Jesus was for Israel. But if you read further, the woman did not stop. Her indomitable persistence was what was at work at this point in time. What did the woman do? Amazing. The woman came and knelt before the Lord. Pinapaalis ka na, you're being sent away, you're being mocked and told that you do not belong here. But what did she do? She came down and knelt before the Lord. And not only did she kneel in worship, she knelt acknowledging, Lord, help me. Now this time, she has acknowledged, Lord, you are not only the Lord of Israel, you are my Lord. If you have come as a shepherd to Israel, I know that your greatness will trickle down to me, a Gentile woman. If that is not dedication, if that is not persistence to the max, I don't know what else is. If we can only measure the persistence that she had with the persistence every time we come and ask, what is our need? She could not solve her problems of her race because that was a given. She could do nothing about that. She cannot change the fact that she was a woman. She could not have the disciples agree with her, to pray with her and plead with her and urge Jesus to answer to her plea. But one thing that she could do, she could pray and ask Jesus, Lord, help me. If the shepherd of Israel cannot meet her needs, she no longer addressed him as the Son of David. She knew that the Lord of all will be able to help her. And that was Jesus to her at that point in time. Jesus has become her Lord of all. But still, this is the reply that she gets. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Aray naman, Lord, ano pa? The disciples block me. You do not answer me, and now you call me a dog. If only to minimize, the reference of a dog here is a pet dog. Hindi po siya askal or stray dog in the streets. That is why the reference here is saying, I have to feed the children first before feeding the pet dog, which is logical. It's very logical that you feed your children first before the dogs. But a woman who has been pleading, following you, crying, kneeling, worshiping, praying, and yet you compare me to a dog. Diba? Kung ikaw yung babae, aba, laban na to. Insulto personal na. Dog na tawag niya sa akin. But you know what is amazing about this woman? Is her response. Yes, it is, Lord, she said. She agrees. Yes, Lord, I am a dog. In all humility, she accepts the address given to her. And she says, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. She has accepted in all humility, Lord, yes, I am not worthy to receive whatever it is that you will give me. I am not worthy for an answer to your prayer, to my prayer. I am not worthy to receive a full meal from you. But you know what? The woman was pleading too. She was not pleading for a full meal. Hindi nga value meal man lang. It was not even a plate full of food. What she was just asking was the crumbs. Lord, yung tira-tira lang po ang hinihingi ko. How amazing what this woman had. This woman had something in her that pushed her to even accept that the answer to what she was pleading for was just the crumbs that Jesus could give her. This woman, in all our amazement, had this great faith to be able to hang on to the fact that, Lord, the cure of my daughter's ailment are just crumbs that you will drop from the table. Tira-tira lang, Lord, ang hinihingi ko, and my daughter will be healed. Amazing. If that is not amazing faith, I don't know what is. She believed in the Lord, in her humility. Wala po sa 7-Eleven ang humility eh. Diba? A lot of us, we need to buy humility if we can buy it. She also had the persistence, the indomitable persistence. Harangan man ng sibat, yung sinabi nila, I will proceed. I will go and persist until I get my response. She did not stop, but her faith prevailed. Because of that, this is what happened. Then Jesus said to her, Woman, you have great faith. Even Jesus Christ acknowledged na kahit na anong gawin sa kanya, she still persisted to continue to be able to get what she needed. Woman, you have great faith. Samantalang yung disciples niya, he would always say, oh, you of little faith. But here, a Gentile woman at that was being told, woman, you have great faith. You have great faith. And Jesus proceeds, your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that very moment. She did not have to go home to check, and the healing was administered then. No. The moment that Jesus spoke, the child was healed. Her faith was great enough to receive what she desired. Her faith was her currency for answered prayers. Her faith was greater than any other virtue. She was not lauded for being humble. She was not lauded for being a great mother. No. Jesus recognized her as a woman of great faith. That was what she was rewarded for. Her great faith resulted in winning what she wanted. And you know, mga kapatid, all of us have problems, and no matter how big that is, you remember the Lord's promise in Ephesians? What did he say? He said that he is able to do immeasurably more than what you can think or even imagine. But what limits us? What is that barrier that puts us and limits us confined in what we only want? It's our faith. Oh, we of little faith. She was not supposed to believe in any Jew. The woman was a Canaanite after all. She should not put any value on whatever this Israelite man was going to tell her or give her. But she went. She pleaded, she prayed, and she believed. Her faith was her currency to her answered prayer. Kamusta po tayo? How's our faith? Do we have a faith that won't quit? Or do we have a faith that gives up when we don't get a quick response? When there are hurdles along the way? When people don't seem to cooperate with us? The disciples left that place, I'm sure, having such a great faith. Why? Because this was the only account that was written in Tyre and Sidon. After this, there was no other thing that was written. Jesus did not perform any miracles. Jesus did not heal anyone. Jesus did not speak. This was the one and only account that was given about his withdrawal into Tyre and Sidon. I am sure, binaon po ng mga disciples yung faith na na-witness nila, yung answer sa prayer na na-witness nila. My prayer is that God will grant us such a faith so great that it will never quit until we get our answers to our prayers. What is preventing us from praying a persistent prayer? Your faith is your currency to answered prayers, mga kapatid. And this is my admonition to you today. Pray in faith. Your concerns, your problems, it is only your faith that limits you from going to the solution that is Jesus Christ.